Mr. Fantastic Mic Check.
That's what I'm here for.
Can you hear me, Steven?
There's a little delay. Hold on a second. A little quiet.
A little quiet?
Yeah, it's just a little closer.
I wonder if there's like something I can get later for like a enhanced mic, you know?
I'm about as tall as the chief, so that. Is that a good height? Yeah, he tested sound and moved it. So.
It's nice and cold in here for everybody, right?
A little.
It is.
And we thank you. Again, you can play Carol, just remind them, if there's any questions or ask, like, just repeat the question. So that, because people won't hear the question asked that.
It's just one of those.
I don't see it.
They were gonna buy one of those. We have to buy one.
You do too. Yeah, that's good.
And we will actually provide, they already told you that we have some thumb drives with this on it.
Oh, no, we do not, okay.
But sorry about that. We do have some thumb drives we will provide to you with a file on it.
Great.
So don't be overly stressed as far as, sorry, I'm gonna take my mask off while I do this, so I'm mumbling the whole time. And we'll get started in just a few minutes, but yeah, what the plan is that we'll go through, I'll read a little bit of a statement, explain kind of what happened. I will show you the video full speed. I will then show you, I'm going to slow it down a little bit, kind of explain and narrate a little bit of the video. The only video we're going to see today and actually release is the actual shooting itself. And then after that, we do have some thumb drives for all of you, and that way you can have a copy of the video. You don't have to worry about getting it on the TV screen or the TV monitor while we're doing this. I know that's a tricky thing for you. So. Okay, I think we're at 12 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Gary Giles, G-A-R-Y-G-I-L-E-S. I am the Chief of Police of the Orem Police Department. Today I want to talk to you about an incident that occurred on Friday, May 8th, 2020 at approximately 6:20 p.m. here in the city of Orem. A person waved over a police officer near a gas station at about 1090 North State Street and reported that a suspect in a green pickup truck had struck a vehicle in a nearby car lot and had left the scene of that accident. The suspect vehicle, occupied by a driver and a passenger, was also in the parking lot of that gas station at the time that they made contact with the officer. After hearing the description of what had happened, the officer attempted to stop the suspect. The suspect refused to stop and sped away quickly out on the State Street, nearly striking another vehicle as they proceeded southbound on State Street. That suspect vehicle later, we found out, collided with a fence on 920 North as well, and then eventually made the way out onto 800 North and went westbound. The video that we're going to show you here in just a few minutes is at 800 West and 800 North. If you can picture, Timpanogos Hospital is right there on that corner. We had another Orem police officer that was eastbound on 800 North. That is the view you're seeing on the monitor right now. That officer was eastbound on 800 North at 800 West in front of Timpanogos Hospital, watching for that suspect vehicle. The officer noticed that the suspect vehicle was westbound in the turn lane, preparing to go south. As the light turned green for the officer turned on his emergency lights and positioned his vehicle in front of the suspect vehicle in an attempt to stop that vehicle. As the officer exited his vehicle, the driver, who was later identified as 27-year-old Samantha Bencomo, put the truck in reverse and began backing away from the officer. And I will show you on the video actually even making some hand motions as if calling the officer toward the vehicle. At first, it appeared the driver had maneuvered the truck in an attempt to flee. As the officer who had gotten out of his vehicle, he had his weapon drawn at that time, began putting his gun back in his holster. The driver accelerated and made what appears to be a deliberate attempt to turn sharply into the officer in an attempt to hit the officer. The officer quickly brought his gun back up, and as he was trying to get out of the way of the vehicle, firing several shots at the driver as the truck drove and actually did strike the vehicle. As you'll see in this, that the truck actually does strike the officer. One of those shots apparently did hit a passenger in the chin and face area. The driver of the truck sped away and later collided with another vehicle in the area of 1600 North and 1000 West. After that collision, the driver, Samantha Bencomo, was arrested, later booked into the Utah County Jail on the following charges: 2 counts of failure to stop at the command of a peace officer, 2 counts of failure to remain at the scene of an accident, and 1 count of attempted murder of a police officer. Because the incident includes an officer-involved shooting, the Utah County Officer-Involved Critical Incident Investigations Team, or our OICI team, with officers from outside jurisdictions, was called in to investigate the matter. Therefore, the City of Orem, we do not have all of the information about the shooting beyond a lot of, for example, the officer's body cameras, the dash cameras, so forth. This is still an active investigation. So I hope you can understand that at this time I have been in contact with many parties, including the county attorney and so forth, about the release of this portion. In an effort to be transparent and show the public and show you what happened and what led up to the shooting incident itself, what I would like to do now is show you the dash camera, which is actually the best view of this incident right now. Is show you the dash camera of the actual footage of the shooting. What I want to do first of all is just show you full speed what happened. Don't worry, we're going to go back and we're going to watch it again, and I'll slow it down a little bit and narrate it. You'll see me looking at the computer here. I apologize, I want to look at you as much as possible, but as you're watching these monitors, I'm going to be watching the computer here. So I am going to play at full speed. You'll hear the sound kick on partway through. Just understand when the officers turn their lights on, but that recording is already going. There's a loop, and so when the sound goes on, it's just because there's a delay in the sound going on because that's when he's turned his lights on. So I'm going to go ahead and play that for now, and then again we'll go back and watch it again and go from there. So the officer's eastbound on 800 North. Timpanogos Hospital is on the left, and the suspect vehicle is that green truck right in front of it.
Stop.
I don't know how many of you gasped when that happened, but the first time I saw that, I had a little bit of a gasp of seeing that vehicle come right at that officer. What I want to go and do right again is now go back and narrate a little bit of. Let me just make sure I get this right so I can pause at the right time. So the officer is now pulled over in front of the vehicle, which is trying. Again, I don't know exactly what the reason for pulling over in front. The officer already knows these people are trying to flee in order to get around and stop them. This is the quickest, easiest way. He was eastbound. He gets in front, has his emergency lights activated. He is in full uniform, and as you can hear, when he gets out of the vehicle, he is yelling at the driver to stop. I want you to notice something on this right here is that if you can notice the driver actually is, I don't know exactly what that is doing, but the driver is almost what appears to be motioning to the officer as if, come on, I don't know exactly why.
Stop.
I want you to notice at this point, the vehicle is now backed up and the driver has now purposefully turned the wheels. They didn't just back up and stop. The driver has now backed the vehicle up and turned the wheels to face, turned them to her right, or to the right, in order to proceed, it looks like, into another lane of travel. The officer initially has his weapon drawn, and had that truck stayed in that same lane of travel, most likely that truck would have gone around the officer. At this point, the officer starts to put his gun away. And you'll notice at this point, the driver now purposely, or it looks like intentionally, and I'm speculating on that. Obviously, that is what it appears to me is that Samantha Bencomo now turns the wheel toward the officer and goes directly at the officer. The officer now takes what I kind of call the football stance, in my own opinion, trying to get out of the way of the truck, and is doing his very best to try to avoid getting hit by the truck. If you can imagine how quickly this officer had to move to get out of the way of that. His hand is just off to the side of the middle of the truck. At that point, the truck did actually strike the officer. The officer is doing okay. He was very resilient in that. In going back and watching this over and over again, though, he must really have a good football pose, because that truck did actually strike him at that point. A few questions that I'd like to answer, and I'll let y'all get kind of repositioned from the videos. There have been a few questions in the media as far as why the probable cause statement didn't say anything about a passenger being shot. And I hope you can understand something on, is that there are two separate cases going on here. There is one criminal case on the driver, Samantha Bencomo. That case is what the probable cause statement was written for. And that case, that probable cause statement contains all of that information. There is a second investigation, which is by our officer-involved critical incident team. That involves the officer-involved shooting. That is a separate case right now. And so the reason that there was no mention of that in the probable cause statement on Samantha Bencomo was that it really wasn't a critical part of the charges of that I had previously read of failure to stop a command and peace officer, failure to remain at the scene, or attempted murder of the officer in the probable cause statement. Now, it does appear in many reports. I haven't read through all the reports, but all of the officers' reports will reflect that. A probable cause statement is exactly that. It's a probable cause statement as far as when we booked them into jail. And so that was one question that had come up. Investigations, I'm sorry, I lost my spot. Those actions are independent of the shooting. Those actions of Bencomo and the facts that the officer shot at the driver and that the passenger was injured during the shooting do not relate to why the driver was arrested and booked into jail for those crimes. The City Police Department definitely expresses our sympathy to the passenger and to her family, and we hope and wish her a quick and speedy recovery. If any of you have any questions, one other thing I wanted to point out is that our officer-involved critical incident policy is located on our website. So if you go to orem.org, you can find our OICI policy under the police department, under police policies, and then officer-involved shooting protocol if you have any interest in seeing that. It is published there. And then I'd be happy to take a few questions if you have any.
I have one.
Go ahead.
The passenger's family was worried that after she was released from the hospital, she might potentially face charges too. Do you know if that's something of consideration?
Right now, I don't know. And the reason I don't know is that both investigations are still very active. We don't have, we're still gathering surveillance videos from locations. We're still interviewing witnesses. In fact, we have witnesses that have been coming forward since the time of the accident. I just noticed on one of the media outlets just this morning that they interviewed another witness. I'm not sure that we've interviewed that witness yet or not. And so obviously we have a lot of other, we've got to piece this back together, not only to the incident at the car lot, which started this whole thing. We need to know a little bit more about what happened earlier in the day and so forth. So right now, I wish I could answer that, but I just don't know. There's a hand back there first.
Yeah, the family had also theorized that maybe this passenger was the reason the car had crashed into walls. For instance, they were trying to, pull the steering wheel and make the car stop.
I'm sorry, say that one more time, and I'll repeat it so that we all...
No, that's fine. The family had theorized that maybe the reason this truck had crashed so many times, into the wall and other things like that was because the passenger had pulled the steering wheel to maybe try to make Sam pull over or something. Do you know if that happened at all?
So the question is that it sounds like, and I haven't heard this theory, but it sounds like that you may have heard a theory that the passenger had been possibly attempting to pull it on the steering wheel, trying to get Samantha Bencomo to stop. That could be possible. I haven't heard that theory, and I don't know that investigators have been able to talk to the passenger yet. Obviously, she was in the hospital and sedated. I think family members. And our effort was mostly for her privacy rights. I mean, obviously, as a police department, we're not. I don't want to release information that she doesn't want released. The family members have obviously, and it sounds like maybe the passenger as well has openly and willingly identified herself. But as a police department, we're trying to respect those privacy rights. But I haven't heard that theory. But at some point, I'm sure that she will be interviewed, and whether or not that's what she said, that's just speculation. So I don't know.
What is the relation between the two persons, the driver and the passenger?
What is the relation between the driver and the passenger? I don't know the exact relationship. I've heard, but I don't know the exact, I haven't been able to confirm. So that would just be speculation. So I'm not gonna answer that right now because again, I'm not positive on that.
Thank you.
So Chief, aside from the probable cause statement, it seemed like in most of the interviews given the night of the incident, there was no mention of a shooting victim. Do you agree with that, or do you feel you should have mentioned that? Was there a reason not to mention that?
So the question, and I may not repeat it exactly, I'm just trying to repeat it for all of it.
Most of us seemed surprised the next day to find out somebody was in the hospital. There was no,
Right.
it was said, the questions were asked, was there somebody hospitalized? The answer was no, and we're glad everybody's okay, but there wasn't a person okay, there was a person in the hospital.
Absolutely. So the question is on the night of the incident, there was no mention of somebody being shot, and there may have even been an understanding that no one had been hospitalized. And the answer to that is first of all, we weren't positive at the time, at the initial outset of this. There had been a pretty major collision on 1600 North involving the vehicle in which the passenger that was eventually, we did find out had been shot, was involved. We didn't know initially whether that injury was from a gunshot wound or was from an accident. So initially, we were still trying to figure this all out. If you can understand, there are potentially 5 separate scenes that are going on right now. And so those initial interviews, we weren't sure exactly whether there had been a shooting, a gunshot wound or not. As far as the statement of no one had gone to the hospital, I believe what that statement was from, the question had been asked whether the officers were all okay. And I believe that the statement was that yes, they are okay, everybody is okay. And that statement was in regards to all of our police officers.
At the risk of sounding Monday morning quarterbacky, I've heard some attorneys that ask the question, things like, did the officer really need to fire? Couldn't he have just jumped out of the way? To people who ask questions like that, how would you respond?
I think this is a perfect scenario because that is the question is for those people who asked the question, couldn't the officer just jump out of the way? That's why we're here today. I want to show you this, and I want to show you. And I'll ask you a rhetorical question. Do you think you could have jumped out of the way? Somebody that was much slower probably wouldn't have gotten out of the way. When you look at this officer, he is not running out in front of that car with his gun drawn, yelling and screaming. That officer was actually in the process of putting his gun back in the holster. Now, if you can imagine, let's go back and actually look at this video for just a second to answer that question. I'd like to actually see and show you how quickly this progresses from the point he is starting to put his gun back into the holster to the time that truck now starts trying to hit him. Sorry, it's going to take a second to get there. All right, so at this point, right there, the officer's now holstered his weapon. 1001. There's not a whole lot of thought process that goes into that. That is the reaction of trying to save your life. And I'm only speculating right now. We have a lot of investigation to do. I'm not the final say on that. But in looking at this and watching that kind of a video, the question being asked is, why didn't the officer just get out of the way? I think the officer was trying to get out of the way. In fact, he was actually putting his gun back in his holster. And what his thought process is, I don't know. But if that truck had gone out and around him, he probably would have gotten back in his car and probably chased the vehicle and gone after it. I think the officer, in answering that question, was trying to stay out of the way of that vehicle. Had the officer gone to his right instead of his left, he would have been hit. So the only attempt he could make was to go to the left. Right behind you, and then we'll get you.
Thank you. I think you mentioned, did I hear this correctly, that there was more video, you only released part of it. So is there more video from other officers? Is there more video from this
Not of the
After?
shooting, not of the shooting itself. This is the video. There is body camera video of this, but it's
Yes.
very, there's a lot of it is blurred, it is obstructed because of arm. This is what we are releasing right now. As far as other dash cam, I mean, obviously we have several scenes. We have some video from different parts of that, and we will get to that, and we will be able to release that at some point. I need to work through the county attorney's office and the officer-involved critical incident team that is investigating. At this point, this is the video that we're able to release.
The body cam, just to confirm, is from the officer that was hit by the truck, or is there other body camera video from other officers?
Well, there would be other body camera video from other officers at different scenes. This is the only officer that is at this scene.
Did the officer who was involved or who fired here, did he have a body camera
Yes, he did.
activated?
Yes, he did.
No, so there is video, that's the video you're referring to?
Yes, yes.
Okay, and so would we be able to see that?
Not today, but it is video that it does exist, and at some point, again, it is an active investigation, and in speaking with the OICI team, the county attorney's office, hopefully we can get to that point where we can release more information.
Did you say how many times the officer fired?
I don't have the answer to that.
It's hard to tell or hard to see.
I had heard a couple different numbers, and I'm not positive on the exact number right now.
Also, it looks like can you tell us what happened when the officer went after that, the video stops? Because the shadow looks like he maybe, I couldn't tell there's a shadow there. Maybe he ran off to the other side or fell, do you know?
He actually was pushed off to the side by the vehicle. He then gets on the radio and told dispatch that they had tried to run over him, and that he had fired some shots into the vehicle. He then gets in his vehicle and tries to give chase and pursue him. The suspect got on I-15 northbound, and as the officer, he was far enough behind that when he got on I-15 northbound, lost sight of the vehicle. That officer actually continued northbound on I-15 trying to find the vehicle when in fact it had actually exited on 1600 North. So there was no pursuit leading up to the accident on 1600 North. We actually had lost the vehicle on I-15. It had exited on 1600 North, and then officers found the accident at 1000 West 1600 North as we were looking for that vehicle.
So the officer that fired is the one that jumped into the car and chased and tried to go find the truck?
Yes.
Okay, so he wasn't disabled?
No, he was not disabled. He was able to get off to the side of the vehicle enough that it pushed him off the side. I don't believe it knocked him down. I think he was able to maintain his balance, but it did strike him and push him off to the side, and then he was able to give dispatch information on the vehicle and the fact that it had attempted to hit into him, and also that he had fired some rounds.
So just to clarify, the shooting happened before or after this?
The shooting happened during this. In fact, at the point where the vehicle turns into the officer and you see the officer put his hand out, that's as he's redrawing his weapon. And so that 1 second that I replayed just a minute ago, where the tires turned into him, that's where that shooting occurred.
Okay, so the shooting basically happened after we can no longer see them on camera.
It was during that time. I mean, you can't see necessarily the officer. It's at the time that he is being pushed off to the side by the truck. And you'll be able to when we give you your copy. I believe you can hear some of the shots on that. And we'll take just a couple more questions. Have a take one from the.
Thank you. About how far from where this accident and the shooting happened to where the truck finally stopped and officers found it? Can you give us a length of time that went by, and also how far, like miles-wise, that was?
Can't give you the time. I'm not positive on that. It was a very short amount of time. As far as the distance, it's 800 north, 800 west to I-15 northbound. They got off on 1600 north. I believe there was another collision that may have happened, and I don't have details on that, somewhere in the area of Home Depot. So I don't know if they'd gone straight up 1600 north. That's still part of the investigation that's ongoing, and I don't have information on that. And then the vehicle was found at about 990 west, 1600 north is where the actual accident occurred, the final accident. Yes, go ahead.
Just want to go back to that probable cause statement really quickly, because typically, you know, an injury sustained during an officer-involved shooting isn't something we're left in the dark on for that long. Do you find it unusual or peculiar that it was left out, given that shots being fired could be considered a level of self-defense against what that charge would be for attempted murder of a police officer?
Again, this is just a probable cause statement. This is something that goes to the judge to determine whether or not the suspect is kept in jail. This is not a full report. This is not I mean, obviously our investigation is going to take some time. We had many officers that came out from multiple jurisdictions to help investigate this. In taking someone to the jail the night of this shooting, we don't have all of the information. We just have the probable cause, and that probable cause, obviously, if you've ever seen a probable cause statement as compared to a police report, the probable cause statement is very brief. It's just basically presenting to a judge what the probable cause to hold them is. A report is a whole separate situation, which is documenting everything. So the fact that would not be mentioned, I don't know that it's necessarily odd that it just didn't pertain to the charges that she was being jailed on. As far as was the Orem Police Department trying to downplay this? Absolutely not. We followed every bit of the protocol. We were just trying to really figure out what had happened, because again, there was a pretty major accident that happened on 1600 North. At that point, we didn't know if the injuries had occurred because of the accident, had the injuries occurred prior to the accident, or had the injuries occurred because of a gunshot wound. We still just didn't know. And so, in all reality, there are multiple things going on, and that probable cause statement had to do with Samantha Bencomo.
So, 2 points of clarification. One, do you know what caused that final crash? Why she crashed into the wall?
That I don't know. And obviously there had been multiple hit and run accidents leading up to this, so we are investigating that as far as whether she was impaired. You know, we've heard another theory here tonight, or today, I'm sorry. At this point, we're still looking into that. I have no idea why she'd run into that vehicle, but I don't know why she'd run into the first vehicle nor the fence at 920 North. I just couldn't even answer that.
And then prior to the shooting, right when the officer was about to confront them, at that point, they're just wanting for hit and run and fleeing, is that correct? Or what were the charges at that point?
Up to the point where the officer...
Prior to the shooting, right when he stops them.
At that point, there most likely the charges would have been a leaving the scene of an accident and failure. So let me repeat the question again. So up to the point where the officer confronted the vehicle at 800 West and 800 North where the shooting occurred, what would have been the charges at that point? The charges at that point would have been failure to stop at the command of a peace officer and leaving the scene of an accident at that point.
So, but it's okay to get out of the car. I mean, he was drawing his weapon before and then putting it back in, right? So he gets out of his car and he's already drawing his weapon. And then...
You notice that the vehicle, so the question being, he was getting out of his vehicle when he already was drawing his weapon. If you notice, the vehicle was already backing away from him. So, as a police officer, having worked many years on the street, this is a very dynamic situation. You've already got somebody who is running from a police officer. As this officer now has his emergency lights activated, you now have somebody who is backing away from the officer, motioning to him like this. I think the officer, you know, if it were me, I would be a little concerned for my safety at that point. So, one more question then.
Can you tell us anything about your officer who's involved in how long he or she's been on the force, et cetera? Any other experience or whatever else you can say?
The officer has been on our force for several years. Had some experience prior to that. I'm not going to release who the officer is, but has many years of law enforcement experience. And at this point, that's all I'm going to release on the officer.
It's a male officer.
I've said him and his, so I guess I could probably go ahead and say yes. All right, we'll take one more.
Thank you. In terms of the, Julia Jones, the, alleged passenger in the truck, when would we get information about how that played out in that incident? Would that be a different probable cause statement? Would that be a police report? If it's gonna be in the police report, is that something that in light of the confusion that you guys would kind of speedy that process to at least get some of that information from you?
So as far as, I guess the question would be is, as far as the passenger is concerned, at what point would the police department release information on her? There's two things.
Yeah.
One, if that passenger were to be charged with a criminal offense, then obviously that would be a point where a probable cause statement would be released, and then that would be made public. If there are no charges, which I don't know if that would be the case, at some point the officer involved shooting protocol team, or the officer involved critical incident protocol team will present a case to the county attorney's office. That case going to the county attorney's office would then determine whether or not the officer was justified in that shooting or not. And at that point, that may be accessible to the public. As far as the Orem Police Department, we respect the rights of the passenger, and I haven't released her name, nor am I going to release it. I know that the family has talked to media. I respect her rights, and I'm not going, I don't have her permission to release her name, and so I'm not going to release that. And so at this point, again, my heart goes out to the family and to her, and I wish her a full recovery. And
I guess my question is more, because an officer discharged his weapon, where would that report be? The weapon was discharged, here are the people that were injured, or, you
absolutely.
don't have to name, how does that work?
So that works with the officer-involved critical incident protocol team. In fact, again, if you want to, you can go to our website and actually read through the entire protocol. We have several commanders throughout the county, so that no matter what agency is involved, we can always have an outside commander. They have outside investigators come in. Their report will go through all of that information. So that report will be the one that is turned into the county attorney from the officer-involved critical incident.
And that's why you say you have two. You have the one with, Bencomo, and then you have the officer.
Right, and so the question is that is why we have two different cases. We have a case, we have a criminal case against Samantha Bencomo with the hit and runs, the failure to stop the command of a peace officer, and the attempted murder of a peace officer. That is a whole separate case, and that is being handled by the Orem Police Department with the criminal charges. As far as the officer discharging a weapon, that is being looked into and handled by the officer involved, the Utah County Officer Involved Critical Incident Team. And they will investigate all of that, interview the officers, interview all of the witnesses as well. So you have kind of some simultaneous investigations going on parallel, but they're for different purposes. So, all right, thank you very much. And again, Lieutenant Thomas will be up here to give you the thumb drives, and hopefully we've answered all your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.